Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to unpack dense sources, complex laws, all that stuff, and really boil it down to what you need to know to be properly informed. Today, we're heading virtually to the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago specifically, but the topic isn't exactly sunshine and beaches, it's finance, hard finance. We're decoding their pretty controversial plan to, well, basically freeze the local crypto industry for a while. And, when we say crypto now, it's not some tiny niche thing anymore. We're talking a global market worth something like $4 trillion. For lots of places, TNT included, these digital assets aren't just about investing. They can be real solutions, maybe helping with remittances, getting money home easier, or, and this is a big one in TNT, finding a way around these serious foreign exchange shortages they keep having. It's a real structural economic problem there.
Exactly. And that tension, right, their innovation as this potential financial lifeline versus the absolute need for rules and oversight. That's really the core of what we're diving into today. Our focus is this new bill they've tabled, the Virtual Assets and Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill, 2025. Let's just call it the VA bill. And what we've done is pull together, the bill itself, what the government's saying about why they're doing it, and importantly, a lot of feedback and criticism from the local fintech people, lawyers, even small business owners. It reveals this central conflict.
Right. So on one side, you've got the government saying, look, we need this for international credibility. It's about compliance, meeting global standards set by the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, for things like anti-money laundering. Vital stuff.
Correct. That's the official goal. Anti-money laundering, countering terrorist financing. But the reaction from the local industry, it's alarm pretty much across the board. They're worried, really worried, that this bill, as it stands right now, is just it's been called a terribly restrictive regulatory framework. So heavy, so restrictive, it acts like a ban. It could clamp down on people's ability to invest freely and basically choke off economic opportunity in, one of the fastest moving sectors in the world.
So for you listening, what we're trying to distill is what this bill really means for innovation, for financial freedom, and maybe even for accidentally turning everyday transactions into potential crimes. Okay, let's really get into this bill then. What's it actually proposing? What's the structure of control the government wants to put in place?
Well, the first thing is setting up who's in charge. The bill clearly points to the TNT Securities and Exchange Commission, the TTSEC. They get the job.
Right, the TTSC.
Yeah, they're tasked with overseeing and, crucially, authorizing, or, not authorizing, as we'll see, both virtual assets, or VAs, and the companies that deal with them, the Virtual Asset Service Providers, VASPS.
And defining virtual asset must be pretty fundamental here. What actually falls under this? Is it everything digital?
Good question. It's defined as a digital representation of value, something you can trade digitally, transfer, use for payments or investment. But importantly, it specifically excludes a few things.
Okay, like what?
It doesn't cover digital versions of regular fiat currencies, like a digital TT dollar if they had one. And it doesn't cover existing securities or financial assets that are already regulated under TNT's current laws. So we're really talking about things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, stablecoins that aren't pegged to the TT dollar, and maybe digital collectibles, NFTs, that kind of thing.
Got it. So it's targeting the new stuff, the decentralized assets, and the main hammer is Clause 4.1, right? What does that say exactly?
That's the core prohibition. It says, no person can, as a business or in the course of a business, and that phrase is critical, carry on virtual asset activities in or from TNT unless they get authorized by the TTSEC.
As a business. That seems like the absolute key phrase there. Everything hangs on that.
It really does. And the bill then spells out exactly what those commercial activities, the VASP activities, are in Clause 4 too. It's pretty comprehensive. 5 main categories.
Okay, what are they?
1, exchanging virtual assets for fiat currency. So your local crypto on-ramps, off-ramps, places you buy crypto with TT dollars or sell it back. 2, exchanging one type of virtual asset for another, like swapping Bitcoin for, say, Solana or something. 3, transferring virtual assets, moving crypto from one wallet to another for a customer. 4, safekeeping or administration, basically holding onto crypto or the private keys for someone else, custodial services. And 5, getting involved in or providing financial services related to offering or selling a virtual asset. Think initial coin offerings, crypto fundraising, things like that.
Wow, okay. That list pretty much covers anyone making a business out of touching crypto for other people. But now we get to the part causing the biggest uproar. Clause 4.3, the deadline.
Yes. This is the bit that really shocked the industry. It explicitly prohibits the TTSEC from giving out any authorization for any VASP activities. That includes basic things like wallet service providers. And the prohibition lasts until December 31st, 2027.
Wait, just to be crystal clear on that date, December 31st, 2027, that's, well, assuming the bill passes soon, that's easily a 3-year freeze.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum 3 years. And it's not just regulation during that time. It's a full stop. A temporary but total blanket freeze on any formal regulated commercial growth in this sector.
Regardless of whether a company is ready, willing, and able to meet all the compliance rules today.
Doesn't matter. The door is shut until 2028, essentially. And it gets worse for people already doing this.
How's
Clause 4.5. If you were already running a VA business before the bill starts, you have to tell the commission within 1 month. Okay, notification. But then, and this is the kicker, you have to cease that activity within 3 months.
Whoa. So establish local crypto exchanges, people doing peer-to-peer trading as their main job.
Yeah.
They have to just shut down within 3 months of the law passing.
Shut down their commercial operations.
Right.
Almost immediately. Yes.
Which brings us right back to that phrase, carrying on business. Because for you listening, the difference between just holding some crypto personally and being classed as an unauthorized VASP operator, well, it's huge.
It's everything. And the legal interpretation of carrying on business can be really broad.
Yeah.
It often includes anything done with continuity, repetition, or expecting to make a profit, even if it's small scale.
Right. And that's the potential trap, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you buy, say, $500 of Bitcoin once, hold it for years, you're probably fine. That's personal investment. But what about the person who helps maybe a dozen neighbors swap small amounts of TT dollars for crypto each month, maybe taking a tiny commission, helping them get around Forex issues?
That sounds like repetition, continuity, expectation of gain.
Exactly. Even if it's small amounts, that activity could easily be interpreted as carrying on business. And specifically, it looks like VASP activity number 1, exchange between VA and fiat. So under this bill, that person could suddenly be operating illegally.
Or what about DeFi, decentralized finance? If someone's staking their crypto, earning regular rewards for helping secure the network, is that providing a financial service related to VAs with an expectation of gain?
It definitely creates a gray area where clarity is desperately needed. The moment your activity shifts from just passive holding to something more active, repetitive, aiming for profit, the risk under this bill just skyrockets, especially because, remember, the TTSEC can't authorize anyone until 2027. So there's no legal way to do these things commercially. It pushes potentially legitimate, small-scale operators into this unauthorized box, #tag 2 or 3, the government's intent and the challenge of enforcement.
Okay, the impact on innovation, shutting down existing businesses, it sounds quite dramatic. So we have to ask, what's the government's official reason? Why go this far, especially with that multi-year freeze?
Well, the official line, the narrative from the Minister of Finance, is very much focused on crime, illicit activity. The stated intention is to go after people supposedly hiding billions in secret accounts and to stop virtual assets being misused for money laundering, particularly by those involved in, illegal drugs, other major criminal enterprises.
So cleaning up the financial system, making sure TNT isn't seen as a weak link for dirty money.
That's the idea, and it ties straight back to that international compliance piece we mentioned earlier. This isn't just about TNT looking inwards. It's about their global reputation and standing.
Right, the FATF connection.
Exactly. This legislation is framed as a direct response to what the Financial Action Task Force requires. Specifically, it's about meeting FATF Recommendation 15, which deals with new technologies, and Recommendation 16.
Recommendation 16, that's the travel rule, isn't it?
Yes, the crucial travel rule. And TNT, as the government itself acknowledges, was long overdue on this. FATF extended its rules, its AML-CFT measures, anti-money laundering, countering the financing of terrorism, to cover VAs and VASPs way back in 2019. So TNT is essentially playing catch-up. And the potential consequences of not complying, like being graylisted or even blacklisted by FATF, are politically and economically serious.
Can we just quickly unpack that travel rule? For listeners who might not be deep in the financial regulations weeds, why is it so important, and why would failing to implement it lead to such a drastic step like a multi-year ban?
Sure. So the travel rule FATF Recommendation 16 basically says that financial institutions, and this now includes VASPs, have to get and hold certain information about who's sending and who's receiving a virtual asset transfer once it's over a certain threshold. We're talking names, account numbers, or wallet addresses, in this case, physical addresses, things like that. It's essentially trying to make crypto transfers operate like bank wire transfers from an information perspective. Transparency for regulators.
Got it. So you know who's moving the money.
Precisely. And because TNT hadn't implemented this since 2019, the government likely views the existing local VASP scene as operating without these critical safeguards. From an international perspective, that makes the whole sector look inherently risky. So the moratorium, the freeze, you can interpret it as the government saying, okay, stop everything. We can't risk being non-compliant anymore. We're shutting the whole formal sector down until we figure out how to actually build the systems and laws to enforce this travel rule properly.
Okay, that provides some context for the severity, but here's where it gets, well, really interesting, as you said earlier. The gap between wanting to enforce this and, well, actually enforcing it, the penalties are huge.
They are. Punitive is the word many critics are using, maybe even disproportionate. If you fail to comply with this prohibition operating without authorization, you're liable, on summary conviction, to a fine up to $5 million.
5 million TT dollars. That's enormous.
Huge, and potentially 5 years in prison. And this isn't just for the company. It applies to individuals, directors, officers, even members if it's an unincorporated group.
Wow. And I heard something about daily fines, too.
Yes, and this is almost hard to believe. The bill specifies daily fines of $500,000, $500,000 TT, for every day the offense continues after you've been convicted.
$500,000 a day.
Oh, per day. So you can see the scale of seriousness the government wants to project. Or, as some critics argue, maybe how disconnected it is from the practical reality for small operators. If an unauthorized exchange keeps going for just a week after conviction, that's $3.5 million in daily fines, plus the initial $5 million penalty.
That's absolutely crippling. And to back this up, the TTSEC gets pretty broad powers.
Very broad, yeah. They can demand information from anyone they suspect, they can launch inquiries into people's affairs, and they can get court orders ex parte, meaning the target isn't even there to argue against it to enter premises.
When once they're in.
They can look at everything, books, records, accounts, and crucially for this sector, any data stored electronically. It's a significant expansion of regulatory surveillance over digital finance.
Okay, strong powers, massive penalties.
Yeah.
But the critics are really hammering the point about practical enforcement. Can the system even handle this?
This is probably the most powerful counter-argument from the ground. Critics repeatedly point out that TNT's criminal justice system is, frankly, known for being slow, sometimes ineffective. They cite examples like a major fraud case that apparently dragged on for nearly a decade without anyone actually being prosecuted successfully.
So the argument is?
The argument is that this VA bill, with potentially hundreds or thousands of small-scale actors technically falling foul of the broad carrying on business definition, well, it would just be prohibitively expensive to enforce. It risks completely swamping the TNT Police Service, the TTPS, and the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP. How do you investigate and prosecute potentially thousands of small PDP traders alongside serious criminals?
So the fear is it becomes a law that's either impossible to enforce fairly, leading to maybe selective prosecutions, or it just sits on the books, unenforced, but still having that chilling effect, scaring off all the legitimate activity.
That's exactly the concern. Plus, industry groups also make the point that these penalties, the $5 million fine, the 5 years jail, often seem heavier than penalties for similar types of rule-breaking in traditional finance. Things like certain kinds of insider trading or other white-collar offenses.
So it sends a message, maybe unintentionally, that this new tech is somehow inherently more dangerous or requires harsher punishment just because it's new?
That's how it's being perceived by many in the sector, yes. That the focus is disproportionately heavy, perhaps driven more by fear or misunderstanding than by a balanced assessment of risk.
Let's pivot now to the human side of this. That's really the listener's main concern, right? If the stated goal is targeting these big illicit players moving billions, how does this bill actually land on the average legitimate citizen, the person just trying to get by or maybe innovate in TNT's challenging economy? Is the cure potentially worse than the disease here?
Well, critics argue pretty strongly that the bill seems to ignore the day-to-day economic reality for many in TNT. The U.S. dollar shortage, for instance, isn't just some abstract economic indicator. It's pervasive. It hits importers, manufacturers, even individuals trying to pay for, say, software subscriptions or online services based abroad.
Right.
And for a growing number of people, crypto hasn't been about getting rich quick. It's become a practical tool, a financial lifeline almost.
How exactly does crypto help with the Forex shortage? Can you elaborate on that link?
It comes down to access and speed. For remittances, it's often faster and cheaper for people working abroad earning U.S. dollars to send crypto back home compared to going through traditional banks with high fees and slow conversion times. But maybe even more critical is for businesses. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, they're using crypto to pay international suppliers to access digital tools they need to run their business tools, often priced in USD. They might hit daily limits at the bank for buying US dollars or just face long delays. Crypto can offer a way around that friction.
That story about the vehicle importer really drives this home, doesn't it?
It really does. We saw this anecdote from a small business owner. He explained how bank limits on buying USD were stopping him from paying for essential vehicle parts he needed to import. He couldn't get enough dollars quickly enough.
So what did he do?
He turned to crypto, converted his TT dollars locally into crypto, sent the crypto instantly to his overseas supplier, who was set up to accept it. Problem solved.
But under this bill.
Under this bill, the local platforms facilitating that TT dollar to crypto conversion would likely be shut down as unauthorized VASPs. So for that business owner, the government isn't just regulating crypto. They're potentially cutting off his access to international trade, maybe forcing him to shrink or even close his business because of currency issues. It ties back to what the FinTech Association president highlighted. Trying to regulate crypto without also fixing the root cause, the severe US dollar shortage, is kind of counterproductive. It just pushes these necessary transactions into the shadows onto the black market, which is arguably riskier for everyone.
And the impact isn't just on traditional business or finance, right? The broad scope seems to be catching creative sectors, too.
Yeah, that's another major concern stemming from those vague definitions we talked about, virtual asset and carrying on business.
Yeah.
It means local artists, musicians, creators who've embraced NFTs, non-fungible tokens to sell their work internationally, could get caught.
How so?
Well, if an artist mints, say, a series of digital art pieces as NFTs and sells them online, receiving payment in crypto, maybe repeatedly, does that count as carrying on business, selling a virtual asset?
Under the current wording, it sounds like it could. Repetitive sales, expectation of gain.
Exactly. So an artist selling their work could theoretically be classified as an unauthorized VASP. It seems absurd, but the legal wording is broad enough to potentially cover it.
Which obviously discourages anyone from innovating in that space in TNT. It deters investment in culture, art, anything using blockchain for distribution or ownership.
Precisely. Why risk setting up an NFT project in TNT if doing so could, however unlikely, lead to massive fines or even jail time for the creator just for selling their art?
And maybe the biggest long-term hit is the brain drain, losing skilled people.
This is a huge worry for TNT's future competitiveness. We're talking about the tech talent, the software engineers, the developers, the cybersecurity folks, the marketers, the business development people who understand fintech. If the whole regulated industry is shut down until 2028, where do these people go? Shiva Ramdeen, who founded a local crypto on-ramp, basically called it a forced exodus.
They'll just leave TNT for places with more welcoming regulations.
That's the fear. These are exactly the kind of high-value, future-focused jobs TNT says it wants to nurture. But this bill seems to be actively legislating them out of existence locally, worsening a brain drain problem the country already struggles with.
And this all circles back to the critique of the definitions being too broad, right? Capturing things FATF probably never meant to target.
Yes. The FinTech Association argued strongly that the definition of virtual asset in the TNT bill goes way beyond what international standards actually require. It scoops up activities that are arguably quite innocuous.
Like what? Give us some concrete examples.
Okay, think about a developer who creates a really useful non-custodial crypto wallet app. They don't hold your funds, just provide the software. And maybe they charge a small yearly fee for premium features.
Seems reasonable.
But is that providing financial services related to a VA offer or sale? Is the app itself related to VAs? Under a broad interpretation, maybe. And since the TTSEC can't authorize him until 2027, he's technically operating illegally, subject to those 5-year prison terms. It's the accidental criminalization that's worrying.
Or even things like in-game tokens in video games, loyalty point systems. Could they technically be digital representations of value?
That's the level of concern the vagueness creates. It reframes the whole debate, doesn't it? It moves from necessary regulation to potentially infringing on basic financial freedom.
Yeah. There was that quote from the anonymous investor.
Yes, it really struck a chord. This young investor argued, and we're quoting from the sources here, "The right to invest is no different from the right to speak. Take away the right to invest, and you are indirectly silencing people's financial voice." Quote, "In this ever-evolving world of currencies and assets." It's a powerful argument that, for some, particularly younger generations or those excluded by traditional finance. Restricting access to the global digital economy feels like denying them opportunity and agency, especially when the traditional system itself presents so many barriers, like the Forex shortage.
Okay, so if the goal is genuinely protection and compliance, and even the industry critics seem to agree that some regulation is needed, what's the alternative path? What reforms or different approaches are being proposed instead of this? Well, this freeze, because the current plan is clearly seen as, backward, even destructive.
Right. The consensus among critics isn't no regulation, it's better regulation.
Mhm.
Regulation that, yes, protects consumers and meets international standards, but also allows for innovation to happen, doesn't kill the sector. The big fear is that TNT will just lose out. Tech jobs, investment, venture capital, it'll all just flow to other CARICOM countries that adopt more progressive, adaptive policies. So the call is for something smarter, more balanced.
Now, the Minister of Finance did say the bill is a work in progress, invited feedback. Did the industry actually come back with concrete ideas? Or was it just general complaining?
Oh no, they came back with very specific, detailed proposals. They actually formed a group, the Virtual Assets Working Group, or VAWG, specifically to engage with the government and advocate for alternatives. Part of the critique was that maybe the government lacked deep technical understanding when drafting the initial bill, and that they weren't being clear enough about how the ban would stop crime without hurting everyone else. So the VAWG tried to offer constructive solutions.
Okay, so what were the main structural ideas they put forward instead of just shutting everything down until 2028?
The core idea is proportionality and phasing. Instead of a blunt 3-year moratorium, they advocate for something like a regulatory sandbox or a pilot approach.
A sandbox, like a controlled environment.
Exactly. Allow businesses that can meet strict compliance standards to operate, but under close supervision by the TTSEC. It lets the regulator learn how to oversee the sector effectively, gain experience, while still allowing responsible innovation to continue legally. It balances risk management with growth.
That sounds more sensible. Did they suggest ways to filter out the small players from the potentially risky big ones, like a threshold?
Yes, that was a key practical suggestion. They proposed limiting the full weight of the VA bill to entities dealing with transactions above a certain threshold. The figure mentioned was around 50,000 TT dollars per annum.
50,000 a year. What's the thinking behind that number?
The rationale is pretty straightforward. Really large-scale money laundering, the kind that worries FATF, isn't likely happening in tiny transactions below that level. Organized crime deals in much larger sums. So by setting a threshold like $50K, you allow the TTSEC to focus its limited resources where the real AML risk lies on the big, suspicious flows.
Right. Target the real potential criminals.
Exactly. And at the same time, you let the small fish swim. The small businesses using crypto for imports, the individual P2P traders helping neighbors, the artists selling NFTs. They can operate without the constant fear of million-dollar fines and jail time hanging over them. It separates innovation from crime.
That deals with the scale issue. What about the vague definitions? Did they point to better examples elsewhere, international models TNT could learn from?
Absolutely. The Cayman Islands VASP Act from 2020 often comes up as a more balanced regional example.
Oh.
Critics point out that TNT's bill is missing some really critical exclusions that Cayman specifically included in their law.
Exclusions? Like what specifically?
Two really important ones. The Cayman law explicitly says it does not apply to the development or sale of a software application.
Okay, so that protects the wallet developer we talked about.
Right. And crucially, it also excludes personal use of a virtual asset.
Personal use. That seems vital.
It provides exactly the kind of bright line clarity the TNT bill lacks. It immediately shields the casual saver, the investor holding for themselves, maybe the artist selling their own work directly. It stops them from being accidentally lumped in as unauthorized VASPs. It's these kinds of definitional shortcomings that lead the local fintech community to see the TNT bill as, well, maybe technically flawed or rushed.
It really underscores the need for perhaps more education and deeper market understanding before bringing down such a heavy regulatory hammer. It feels like they're trying to regulate something they don't fully grasp yet.
That seems to be a core takeaway from the critiques. One local fintech company, Sunshine, made the point that TNT's regulation here should align with the forward-thinking spirit they're trying to foster elsewhere, like with their national AI strategy. Without that deepened understanding, the 3-year ban doesn't just pause innovation, it risks pushing legitimate activity underground. which, ironically, makes it harder for the GTSCC to see what's going on, reduces transparency, and might even increase risk for citizens by forcing them onto less safe, unregulated platforms, likely offshore.
Okay, let's just crystallize this for the listener one last time. We have these two main groups affected. The people actually running crypto services now and the individuals just using crypto. What does the bill mean for them right now?
Okay, for the existing VASP operators, anyone running an exchange, offering wallet custody, or basically making a living from repeatedly trading crypto for others, the proposed law is very clear and very strict. Clause 4(5)(b). They must stop that business activity within 3 months of the act starting. Full stop. Continuing means facing those huge fines and potential prison time.
Right. Shut down or face the consequences. And for the individual, the person just saving, holding, maybe doing a few small trades for personal reasons?
That's where it's fuzzier because of the broad definitions. The explicit ban is on activity as a business. So someone just buying Bitcoin and holding it long term as a personal saving strategy, they should be safe. However, the risk creeps in if their activity starts looking like carrying on business. Regularly doing P2P trades, even small ones, to help friends get around Forex issues. Repeatedly buying and selling different cryptos trying to make quick profits. That moves into the danger zone because of continuity and repetition.
Oh.
Until TNT adopts clearer definitions, maybe like the Cayman model with that explicit personal use exclusion, the safest advice for individuals is probably caution. Be mindful of the volume and frequency of your transactions, because the current wording leaves room for unwelcome interpretation.
So, to wrap up this deep dive, it's complex, isn't it? On one hand, Trinidad and Tobago is clearly moving to meet essential international standards for AML-CFT. That's understandable, even necessary for financial safety and reputation. But the way they're proposing to do it, this long 2027 moratorium, these incredibly broad definitions, the really severe penalties, it seems to pose a serious threat. It risks killing off legitimate economic activity, pushing needed financial workarounds underground, and potentially driving away the very tech talent the country needs for the future.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to maybe mull over after this. We see global financial giants, think Visa, MasterCard, actively, inextricably integrating blockchain into their operations, as one source put it. Countries worldwide are exploring stablecoins, digital assets as the next step for faster, cheaper global payments. So when a nation decides to hit pause to impose a 3-year freeze on innovation in this specific sector, a sector the rest of the world is charging into, is that 3 years genuinely time gained to build the perfect regulatory system? Or is it actually 3 years lost forever? Is TNT potentially ceding vital ground in the future digital economy to competitors who found a way to regulate more smartly, more proportionally, without shutting the door completely?
A critical question for TNT's economic path forward. That brings us to the end of this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we navigated Trinidad and Tobago's challenging digital crossroads.